Today is the first day of the November 86 retreat. At first, a few announcements that were omitted last night. In the meeting room, there are not only 2 mats, there are also 2 chairs. Anyone who would, at one particular time or at all times, be more comfortable talking, meeting in a chair, please let me know. Sometimes I'm already in the chair. I may ask you where you want to sit. So is one free to say? Often people assume that I'm more comfortable on the mats, which is not so. I'm not uncomfortable on them either, but don't assume anything about me. We can talk about it. The other thing is this: there's a chair that's usually here in this seat. Right now it's down there at the corner. That's where it's put while I'm giving a talk. Anyone is free to take that chair during the talk and put it wherever you wish to sit. Also, I'm only using this chair in the round before the talk and at the beginning of a block of sitting most of the time. After that, it's unoccupied, and anyone who wishes to can sit right on this place here, use the chair, turn it any which way. Also, we said yesterday, please don't use the deck while meetings are going on, which means don't use the deck except during meals. But there are a few periods where there are no meetings going on. One of them is right after the talk until up to lunch. It's a nice day and you wish to be out on the deck. After the talk until lunch is a time for it, and also during the exercise period until supper. We did not mention in particular when talking about silence and moving quietly, we did not particularly mention the bedrooms. It's particularly important there to be quiet. Opening the bedroom door, closing it, getting one's things ready, particularly if one comes in and other people are already resting. To move with great care. Not that one can move noiselessly, that's impossible. But if the sounds come out of care, they're somehow different than when they come out of inattention. The many bathrooms upstairs in the dorm area, which means many doors, can each door be opened and closed carefully. It's important that when one needs rest, that it is quiet. At the beginning of a retreat, we say a few things about the talk, how to listen, and about this, for many people, so puzzling relationship between the one who's talking and the one who's listening. Maybe this puzzle can unravel how to listen to a talk. The talk is not given to propagate anything, to provide information, to be remembered, to be believed in or followed. So if one is listening in order to receive information, in order to get something to believe in, something to follow, can one become aware of that state of mind that wants to follow, that wants to believe, and accumulate information and question it? Question that state of mind and wonder if one can listen without it. Can one listen without comparing this particular person who is talking with other persons one has heard talk? And if comparison is in fact going on, can one become aware of it as it is going on and question it? Does it have to go on? And while it is going on, is one listening fully, freely? I don't think one is, because something in the brain, in this computer, which we call the brain, certain items of memory are being called upon, and comparison is a very specific process. Comparing memory of what one has heard with what has already become a memory here. A very limited activity going on in the brain. That's what comparison is. And while it is going on, the broadness and openness of listening is made impossible. Can one observe this for oneself? Not believe in what she says because she's so trustworthy. She may not be. So, when it is said, don't believe or see the believing mind, find out whether what is said is actually so. Does that bring about an opening of listening? Can one actually listen and observe at the same time, see what is going on in oneself? Openly, as it's happening. Not taking her word for it, but looking, wondering, questioning. Because if one takes anybody's word without seeing for oneself whether it is so or not, one is inevitably subject to exploitation, deception. It cannot be otherwise. I don't think I'm out to exploit or deceive, but I have to watch very carefully. That what is said is actually seen to be so. I may be wrong, may make mistakes. And please, if you feel something does not jive, it does not make sense, then do bring it up in a meeting. That's what meetings are for. Not solely, but that's the place to bring it up. Let's go through this again. Let's look at it. And maybe let's change words. Use fresh ones that are accessible. Accessible to what they point toward, what they come from, what they are designating. So, will one be able to listen to this person talk without making or having made an authority figure out of her? On the basis of what one knows or one's feelings about this person? Because she's saying something, one immediately is influenced by it. It must be so. And using these words with others back in the mind as the knowledge, well, she has said so. Or will one look? Not just to find out if she's right or wrong, but because one needs to see for oneself. One needs to be able to understand and think and look and listen clearly for oneself. Only this way will we not continue to confuse and deceive each other and be deceived by each other and by ourselves. And the word deception has an element of intention in it. It does not have to happen intentionally. It happens if one doesn't understand and just uses words which somebody has said. And having made an authority figure out of that person. I mentioned before, maybe because of what one knows about this person, but it can also happen in this mind which is constantly associating. The brain is constantly associating images, unless there's attention and awareness. That process happens automatically. So a person who sits here, unless there's attention of what's going on in the mind, that person is automatically associated with figures who sit in front of people talking, or who talk decisively, with an air of authority. All of this is associated with the image of this person, automatically. Does one see that? So can one just listen to this simple person talking, hopefully simply, so it can be understood and looked into, and not associate this with, allow the association to take place, the association with authority figures. Case of a man, it's father figures. In case of a woman, it's mother figures, teacher figures. School, elementary, high school, college, and spiritual teacher figures. They're so deeply imprinted in the mind, authority. And so quickly does one follow and believe and take the other person's word for it, because it is so arduous to think for oneself, to look for oneself. This is what we're trying to do here in these talks, to look and listen and think clearly together. Not one person telling another, but looking at something together. Without the impact of authority, even though the words may sound, the tone of it may sound decisive or authoritative or whatever. can one just hear them as they are? This particular voice at this moment is what it is. It's tremendous if there's awareness which cuts through association and just listening to what is. Then there's tremendous energy right here. And not the energy feeding into the infinite past, all stored in this brain, of what this reminds me of. We don't go consciously through this process. It happens with speed of lightning if attention does not disconnect this whole network of associations. Every once in a while, somebody says, well, why do you talk then if you're not an authority figure? Why doesn't somebody else sit there and talk? There are many places, hundreds, thousands of places where somebody else talks. So there's no dearth of people who talk. Anybody here is free to go wherever they wish to. It does not endanger the possibility of coming back and listening again and working here again. I don't think it would make any sense to go historically into why this person here talks, although there is a history to it, which did not start by wanting to talk, wanting this. It came differently. But leaving the history aside, it doesn't matter now. Here one is talking. Why does one talk? Just in this recent retreat in Germany, somebody in the last meeting said, why do you do this? It was said, maybe I didn't pronounce it right. It was not, the person really wanted to know. Wanted to find out. Because that person was questioning everything he was doing himself. And aghast at the motives that came up he'd never imagined were there. Why does one talk about something one feels very strongly, very deeply about? Actually, let's take a very simple case of one was hiking in the mountains and one saw a rock coming down the mountainside. And there was someone behind one. Wouldn't one call out, watch out? There's something there, see, look, careful. Car coming. One has the feeling the other one doesn't see it, or driving. One may be in the rider's seat and one sees something, someone says, watch out, careful. The other person may or may not see it. I think we all do that. Do we feel free to say what we see is dangerous, and are we free to look and listen? Listen and look, or just listen but not look? Looking itself so often seems so dangerous. It threatens the whole structure in which one moves, which one has built up for oneself, which gives one some safety, some feeling of being somebody, feelings of importance, under which linger feelings of unimportance and inferiority. And one has built up something for oneself to which one clings, and now it is questioned. Is one free to look? Or is one even able to listen? When something is mentioned that rattles one's foundations. In this connection, I wanted to say something about tiredness during a talk, and also changing of, I actually don't need to say it, people, I think, realize that they can change their posture during a talk. Start out by finding the optimal chair, and cushion arrangement may take some experience. And past experience may not hold. This time something else hurts, not what it was last time. So there's always this possibility. But to find a comfortable way to sit, and if one needs to change the posture, then feel free to do so quietly. It's amazing how much noise can be avoided, not created, when a leg or an arm or both are moved carefully. And at the same time, that deepens the attention. Because in listening to the noise one makes, there is attention. Tiredness during a talk, it is particularly often mentioned at the beginning of a retreat. People tell me, didn't hear hardly anything of what you said. I practically dozed or was absent-minded during the whole talk. One arrives here, maybe tired from the job, the family, the problems, the total hubbub, turmoil of our existence. Strange sleeping arrangements, other people in the room, one may not be used to this and one hasn't slept. And now a talk there, one all of a sudden feels sleepy. So that's one possible reason for it. There is, since the work period, there is quite a stretch of time during which one can rest before a talk, take a nap. If that works, sometimes people tell me if I take that nap, then I wake up more groggy than I was before I lay down. But that grogginess may dissipate after a while. It may be sort of an after lingering of whatever sleep is, and then the rest still has done the whole organism a lot of good. So do take rest before a talk if it helps. And then, can there be some awareness of at what points one conks out? One person told me that she watched that very carefully and realized that these were indeed threatening things that one didn't want to look at when the mind just shut off and went into a state of grogginess or fantasy. Tuning out. And we've all learned that since our early childhood, to tune out the mother, the father, with their constant stream of nagging. I'm not saying that all parents constantly nag, but I think to a child, even if it happens a few times a day, that's a constant stream. I don't think ever in adulthood are we told so many times what we're doing wrong and what we should be doing as children. I don't think we could take it as adults, we wouldn't. I'm not offering an alternative to this right now. This could be a different topic. But because this has happened to us, we have learned to tune out, to read the comics while mom is carrying on. And we can produce comics in the mind anytime. Listen. What is that? If one doesn't get caught up in the word bird, or follow this, scanning what kind of bird is this at this time of the year, or visualizing it. That goes on. But there's also this, what is that? If one doesn't know. People who have trained in spiritual centers ask me at times, what is the relationship, maybe the karmic relationship between teacher and student? A person so trained may not even say you and me, but teacher and student. I'll come back to this question and say something else which is very important. During these talks, as it has developed, what is usually used to start it out or to pick it up later is questions that have come from people in meetings. These questions are used because they're alive. It's what's coming up right now in one person, and if it has come up in one person, it's probably present in many other people's minds. Our minds are not so different from each other. I'm not trying to be indiscreet. There's never any revelation of who this person is. And yet one may feel very sensitive about this, and I appreciate that. And yet can one look, if one feels sensitive about it, what it is that is that feels whatever one feels. One may feel hurt or exposed. That bears looking into. If one had no image of oneself at all, there would be nothing there to be hurt or feel exposed. And yet, if an image is there, can one see that it is an image? Which generates feelings, generates tremendous emotions, and words, and thoughts, and more feelings. One image of what I am and the protectiveness we feel about our image. We protect it and cherish it and defend it as though it was the real human being. Can one look into this? The occasion for it is there almost all of the time because our ways are crossed, stepped upon, threatened. So many times during the day. What is it that feels threatened, that feels the need of protection, that wants to defend and attack, to attack the attacker, or run away from the attacker? And is the attacker an attacker? What is he or she? I can't tell as long as I'm protecting an image. Then all my understanding of this other person is affected and influenced by the image I'm trying to protect. I see the other person in terms of my image, what he's done to it, or what I think he or she wants to do to it. But I may be wrong. How can I understand this other person as long as I'm protecting an image here? I can't. So, to come back. The question is often asked at times, what is this relationship between teacher and student? What is the karmic relationship? All of us who have been exposed and conditioned in spiritual centers of an Eastern religion have been inundated with this concept of karma. For most of us, it came in very handy. It had a real function. To explain things, to excuse things, to postpone things, and to mystify things rather than look at them. I wasn't planning in this talk to go into karma, and I won't. I don't think it's necessary. If this is an unresolved, unfinished business in the mind, bring it up. Maybe eventually a talk will come out of it. Maybe not. It may not be the problem anymore. And yet this thing of karmic relation between teacher and student may be a sticky one, may still be there even though one hasn't verbalized it this way anymore. Does the question ask in simple words, why are we sitting here together? You and I, talking with each other, listening to each other, investigating, examining together. It's so nice to think of some kind of a force that did this for us. It makes it so much more meaningful and significant. But it doesn't aid in the listening, does it? Or in the looking. On the contrary, it is again something to get lost in good feelings or whatever this may evoke in one, feelings of importance. Why are we here? We asked this yesterday. Why are we all here? We could trace out each history and still not have the answer. Is this concept of karmic relationship, is this used by the teacher or the student to bind something together for a purpose? To tie a person to oneself? Because one needs that person? That needs to be looked at. It's such a dangerous thing. Because that's the beginning of exploitation. If you need me, if I need you, then we cannot freely work together. Then the work is determined by our needs, and then it's not open. Exactly how people come here isn't quite clear to me, and I've ceased to think of explanations. Sometimes in trustees' meetings, when we look at our budgets and balance sheets, the question comes up, how could we get more people here to get free of the deficit? And ways are being explored. But I'm not so sure that exploring these ways means that more people will come here. I really don't know. But I don't have the feeling it is through any particular effort that one does to get people to come here. I don't know. So what's the relationship between you and me and you, all of us? Is it image-ridden? I need a teacher. I have to have students. Can one drop those images immediately? Of being a student, of having a teacher, of being a teacher, of having students? And just listen and relate to each other and work together as two human beings, not making that into a concept either. I think it's the least common denominator of all of us, being human beings. It at least has nothing exclusive about it. We are all that. Doesn't give us a special designation. For myself, I think I can say at this moment, this problem of teacher and student has dropped. No matter what I did in the past, how I sounded, came on, looked, dressed. You may not see that. You may still have that image and project something. We do that. We talked about it at the beginning of this talk. So what's our relationship? Can it be one of open meeting, open looking, open questioning, talking with each other? Being really related because there are no images that separate? Does one see that images do separate? You see how much there is to look at, to work with, and to drop, so that something new can come into being. New to our lives because we don't know any relationship outside of image. Or do we? There's no image, then you and I are not separate, are not in conflict or in contradiction. Even though you or I may say something contradictory, and then we'll look at it. Because it's brought up, because it's there now. Let's look at it. Please, if this is not clear, do bring it up in a meeting. From the outset, can we clarify this relationship? Which means look into it and see what's there and wonder about it, whether it has to be there. Or whether it is dispensable. We carry in our programs not only the authority figure of the teacher, but the authority of the system. Here, as some kind of a system, we have cushions along the wall. We've tried to break up this rigid pattern a little bit in the dining room, in the meeting room, and in the solarium. And it's interesting that a few people have tried to straighten the mats. It feels uncomfortable to have them crooked, not lined up. I remember the first time I became aware of this, being upset at my son in the kitchen and immediately beginning to straighten out the counter, set everything in neat order. We become attached to neatness because it is some order to hold on to in this chaos in which we live, the chaos of thoughts and contradictions, opposing desires, fears, to have some external order. So we've become conditioned to it, and either we hold on to it and perpetuate it, finding some kind of safety and security in the orderliness, or else we attack it and we become flagrantly disorderly, just to show our freedom from this compulsion. But the compulsion is still there, only in one case it expresses itself by putting things neatly into order, and in the other case it expresses itself by destroying order, by being sloppy. The rounding out of some of the sitting arrangements in these three different places did not happen out of reaction against the system, because even though we have mats in here straight, it is not representing a system. So far, I think we haven't figured out how to put them here, so many people, in a different way, but we may come up with something which also is not disturbing the sitting itself. Does one feel a comfort, a belonging when one steps into a room which has this arrangement, looking like a system? Can one look at that, question it, wonder about it? If there is attachment to it or reaction against it, there's something underneath it. Why are we attached in the first place? What is attachment doing for us? What is it lifting us out of? I mentioned in the case of being upset at one's child, not facing something, but doing something instead. Not facing anger or disappointment or frustration directly as it is there in its raw state, begging to be looked at, to be dealt with directly. Not being able to do this, we attach to something else. The neatness, or we talked earlier about tuning out the whole thing and fantasizing or reading, going to a movie, whatever we're doing. Don't have to be specific about it. When we're attached, can we question that? Are we aware that we are attached to something? Very difficult to become aware of it as long as it's there. And yet, sitting, walking, working quietly in silence, the inner dialogues and soliloquies, they become quite audible. One can hear what one is saying to oneself and to others, the imagined others. And one can listen in, become aware of it. What the mind is seeking, what the mind is reacting to, attaching to. Just by listening to this verbal stream. If we're caught up in it, we can't listen to it, then we're caught up in it. But here and there, there's a moment of attention. One realizes one has been involved in an old problem, dialoguing with someone about it, arguing or talking to oneself. At this moment of attention, what happens? Can one see the whole thing that took place at a glance? The involvement in argument, unfinished business, the attachment, the reaction, the whole thing. See it at a glance. Or will one continue with it because it felt somehow satisfying? And one doesn't want that satisfaction to be interrupted. That goes for many of our fantasies. We'll talk about this at some other talk. The whole network of fantasy, of desire. But here, a moment of attention in the stream of thinking about what one is attached to and what one is reacting against, suffering from. Does the mind continue? Then it continues. And maybe another moment of waking up to what's just happened. Will one see it? Will one say, oh, why does this have to go on time and time and time again? What hope is there for me? I've worked at this for years and it's still going on. That is another stream of thought. It's just been skipping tracks. Does one see that? How can I overcome this? Is there a method to deal with it? It's thought, conditioned thought. What else is there? Other than one stream of thought taking the place of another, crisscrossing. Is there anything else? If at this moment we're trying to think of something else, that's another stream of thought. At this moment, can there be an instant of just listening? There's breathing going on in this body. Can one listen to it? And there's breathing audible all around one. Tick. Choo. Choo. Just listening, is that thinking? If you think, well, this is a bird, and now I can really listen to a bird. That's thought. But listen again. There's the breathing. Feeling in the knee, in the back, ankle. The heart is beating. Wherever the hands touch, hands or cloth, that's there. It's not a practice, this listening. Either it's there or it's not there. One thinks, how could I practice it more? That's thought. Do you see that? If one wants it, then the whole body begins to strain, tense up in wanting something. Assume a certain internal posture in wanting that listening. Can that itself come into awareness? Not as something special to be listened to, but this is there. While thought tracks are taking place, there's no awareness of what's there. The thought is so vivid, the train of thought, the fantasy is so vivid as though it was real. has color. Just as when one sleeps and has a dream, I often used to have the dream, it's not so frequent now, of stepping off the sidewalk by mistake and spraining the ankle. And man, one has sprained the ankle in bed. Nothing has happened, but the feeling is there, so the ankle was sprained. And there was a jolt as though one fell off the sidewalk. It's so real. Fantasy and thought so intricately connect with our physical organism that real feelings of pain, joy, pleasure are produced. I have a friend whose father has had a leg amputated for, I don't know how many years, 20 or 30 years, maybe more. He still complains about pains in his toes, in this leg which has been amputated. This is how real fantasy and thought seems to be. And we live in it most of the time. Why? And sometimes when a person gets a glimpse of what is actually there, at that moment there's no fear, there's no problem, but when one returns to the life of thought and fantasy and image, so often a person will say, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of that state of reality. Has that in itself become a memory now and connects with fears? I may not be there, I may disappear, I may lose myself. And believing in these thoughts and images and threats and ideas as though they were real, as though they had a solid foundation. But the foundation they have is more thoughts, more ideas, and the feelings connected with them. Maybe way back in the past, or not so long ago, we had a painful experience. Something caused pain. But that's over, that's finished. That reality is no longer there, but it lives on as a memory. Can one see that a memory is a memory? That a thought is a thought, an image is an image? That's their reality. And if you ask, how can I see that? I don't know how to see it. It happens on its own to a mind that is really wondering about how we live. Ensconced in ideas and thoughts, separated by them from what's actually happening. Listen. Can it just be there as it is, or does it become an image, a thought? We will end here for today.